Kyle was used to silence. Life on the outer moons of the Yara system was quiet, sometimes too quiet. His work as a maintenance engineer kept him moving between small mining outposts, fixing broken drills, patching hull cracks, and checking oxygen. Recyclers. The pay was steady, but it meant long stretches alone with only the hum of the machines for company. Back on Earth, things had been different. He'd had friends. He'd had her, Arya. She had been his closest friend since they were kids. They'd shared dreams, secrets, and hours sitting under the city's neon lights talking about the stars. But 3 years ago, Arya had been accepted into the Mars Terraforming Initiative. She'd left with a smile and a promise to write often. At first, she had. Then the messages slowed. Work kept her busy, she said. Then, silence. Cale told himself she had just moved on. People did. But somewhere deep down he felt a quiet ache, a distance not just in space but in everything that had connected them. He missed her voice, her way of laughing at things that weren't even funny. He wanted to reach out but didn't know what to say after so much time. It was on one of these lonely days, while repairing an old oxygen relay on the edge of mining, Station Theta 9, that Cale noticed something strange in the crater outside, a shimmer. At first he thought it was a trick of the thin atmosphere and dust storms. But when he climbed down the slope, he saw it, half buried in the gray soil. It looked like a broken pod, shaped almost like a giant teardrop. The surface was smooth but cracked in places, glowing faintly from within. Beside it, curled up and trembling, was a creature unlike anything Cale had seen. It was small, no bigger than a house cat, with translucent skin that shimmered in soft shades of blue and gold. Its wings, if they could be called that, were delicate and half-folded like wet paper. Its eyes were wide, round, and full of fear. Kyle crouched slowly, not wanting to scare it. "Hey there," he said softly, even though he doubted it understood him. The creature made a tiny, high-pitched sound, almost like the whistle of a kettle. It looked helpless, alone. Something inside Cale shifted. He thought of Arya again, how it felt when she left, when the space between them grew wider and wider. He didn't want this creature to feel that same emptiness. Carefully, he reached out his hands. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." To his surprise, the creature didn't run. Instead, it let out a slow breath and leaned into his palms. Its skin was warm, softer than silk. Kyle wrapped it gently in the thermal cloth from his kit and carried it back to the outpost. He wasn't sure what it ate or even if it could breathe the recycled air inside, but he knew he couldn't leave it out there in the cold. Inside, Kyle placed the creature on his workbench. It curled up under the lamp's heat, its small chest rising and falling. He tried offering it water, but it only sniffed and turned away. He gave it some dried fruit from his emergency rations. No luck. Hours passed. Kyle worked nearby, glancing at it often. It didn't move much, but it seemed calmer. He decided to give it a name, Loom, because of the way it glowed faintly in the dim light. The silence of the outpost didn't feel as heavy with Loom there. Cale found himself talking to it as he worked. He told it about his old life, about Earth's oceans and green forests, about Arya. He told it how he sometimes wanted to send her a message but didn't know if she'd even reply. Loom just listened, or at least it seemed to. It made little chirping sounds sometimes, almost like it understood. That night, Cale sat by the small viewport looking at the endless stars. He remembered how Arya used to say, "No matter where we go, we're still under the same sky." It had been a comfort back then. Now it felt like a question. Was she looking at these same stars from Mars? Did she ever think about him? He turned back to Loom, who was curled up and glowing faintly. Something about the creature's trust, its quiet acceptance of his presence, gave him a strange kind of hope. If a lost alien hatchling could survive crash landing on a barren moon and still reach for warmth, maybe he could find the courage to reach out across the distance too. Maybe it wasn't too late. In the days that followed, Kyle worked and cared for Loom. The creature still refused most food, but it seemed to grow, stronger under the heat lamp. Sometimes it would flutter its tiny wings, sending a shimmer of light across the walls. Kyle couldn't explain it, but he felt less alone. He even drafted a message to Arya. "Hey, it's been a while. I found something out here. Something amazing. I wish you could see it." He didn't send it. Not yet. But it was there, waiting. On the third day, Kyle was outside running a systems check when he saw something strange in the sky. A ripple, like light bending. Then a shadow passed over the mining camp, massive and moving fast. He looked up. His breath caught. Something enormous emerged from the clouds above the crater, wings stretching wider than any ship he had ever seen. Its scales glowed with shifting colors, and its eyes, they were the same deep glowing gold as Loom's. Kale froze. The creature in the sky let out a deep resonant sound that vibrated through the ground. Loom, inside the outpost, chirped loudly in reply. Kale's heart pounded. He realized what he was seeing. Loom wasn't just any creature. This was its mother, and she had come for her child. The air outside the mining station was thin and cold, but Kale barely noticed. His eyes stayed locked on the enormous creature circling above. The dragon-like being's wings moved with slow, powerful strokes, each one sending a ripple through the thin atmosphere. Light shimmered across her scales, shifting like sunlight over water. Inside, Loom chirped again, louder this time, pressing against the viewport as if it knew. Kale's mind raced. This was Loom's mother. There was no doubt. The golden eyes, the same shimmering glow. It was all too perfect a match. But what would she do when she found him? Would she see him as a friend who had protected her young, or as a stranger who had taken it? He stepped back inside, sealing the airlock behind him. The station felt smaller now, as if the weight of the moment had pressed the walls closer together. Loom was pacing the workbench, wings fluttering weakly. The little hatchling's glow brightened when Kyle approached. "I think your mom's here," Kale said softly. "You must be excited." The hatchling tilted its head as if listening. Kale had been alone for so long that it was strange, almost unsettling to realize how much he cared for this tiny creature. It wasn't just about keeping Loom alive anymore. It was about connection. It reminded him of Arya again, how she'd always been there for him when they were younger, how she'd noticed the things no one else did. He remembered the last day. They'd seen each other standing on the busy spaceport balcony. She'd hugged him tight and said, "Don't disappear, Kyle." But that was exactly what he'd done. Maybe it was easier to care for a creature who couldn't leave, who couldn't forget. And yet, looking at Loom now, Kyle felt the truth. Caring meant taking the risk. The mother dragon circled lower, her shadow sweeping over the station. The ground vibrated as she landed just beyond the crater ridge, folding her wings with graceful precision. Kyle's heartbeat thudded in his ears. He had no weapon, no plan, just a small hope that she could somehow understand. Slowly, he lifted Loom into his arms and walked toward the airlock again. "Let's see if we can do this without scaring each other," he murmured. Outside, the world felt sharper. The mother dragon was huge, taller than a building, her head level with the top of the station. Her eyes glowed brighter when she saw Loom, and the hatchling squirmed, chirping in excitement. Kyle took a cautious step forward. "I kept them safe," he said, unsure if words mattered. "They were alone. I didn't know who you were. I just couldn't leave them." The dragon lowered her head, her nostrils flaring as she breathed in the scent of her child. Then she looked at Kale. He didn't see anger in her gaze, only something he couldn't name. It was deep and calm, but it felt like it could see straight through him. Loom wriggled free and leapt into the air, wings fluttering as it landed against its mother's chest. The reunion was quiet, almost gentle. The mother curling her long neck around the hatchling, humming a low musical note that vibrated through the ground. Kyle stood still, unsure if he should leave. But then, the mother dragon's gaze returned. To him, light rippled over her scales. It wasn't just a glow, it was a language. He didn't hear words but feelings, warmth, gratitude, understanding. Kale swallowed. "You're welcome," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure if she'd understand that either. The light from her scales shifted again, and this time Kyle felt something else, a spark in his mind, like a door opening. For a moment, the air seemed alive. He could sense faint threads of heat and energy in the ground, in the rocks, even in the dragon herself. It was overwhelming but strangely peaceful. Then it was gone. Kyle stood there, blinking. The mother dragon gave a slow nod, then bent down, and nudged him gently with her snout. For the rest of the day she stayed near the crater, resting with Loom curled against her side. Kyle returned to the station, but his thoughts kept drifting outside. That spark of connection, whatever it was, hadn't just been some random moment. It felt like she'd shared something with him, something humans didn't normally feel. He didn't know why she'd done it, but the thought filled him with hope. If two completely different beings from different worlds could understand each other, maybe he could find a way to bridge the distance with Arya too. The days after the Dragon Mother's arrival were unlike anything Kale had ever experienced. It was no longer just him and the quiet hum of the machines. The mining station now felt alive in a way he couldn't explain. Every morning he'd find Loom waiting at his door, wings fluttering in greeting. Sometimes the mother dragon rested near the crater, her great eyes watching him as he worked. Kyle wasn't sure why she stayed. She could have taken Loom and left. Yet she remained close enough that he began to feel her presence like a steady heartbeat in the background of his days. One afternoon, as he adjusted the solar panels, the sky changed. It began with a faint ripple, like sunlight bending through water. Kale squinted, thinking it was just heat distortion. But then, the ripple widened into a shimmering arc, stretching from horizon to horizon. It was beautiful, but also strange. The light wasn't natural. The mother dragon raised her head and released a deep, low sound, half warning, half call. Loom answered with a high musical chirp. Kyle froze. "What's happening?" he whispered, though no one could hear him. The arc in the sky brightened, breaking into hundreds of streams of light that drifted downward. For a moment Kyle thought they were meteors, but they moved too slowly, and they didn't burn up. Instead, they seemed to hum, soft vibrations that Kale could feel in his chest. He glanced at the mother dragon. Her scales were glowing brighter now, shifting colors like ripples of fire and water. She looked at him, not with fear, but with meaning, as if this was something important. The shimmering lights touched the ground far away beyond the crater. Kyle's curiosity pushed him forward, but he hesitated. He thought about Arya again, how she had always run toward things she didn't understand while he tended to hang back. She would have loved this moment. She would have told him, "Don't just watch, go see." But he didn't have her here. He had to decide for himself. The mother dragon shifted, lowering her head toward him. A pulse of light rolled off her scales, and suddenly Kale felt it again, that strange sense of connection from before. This time, it was clearer. He could sense her feelings, faint but unmistakable. Trust, invitation, safe. Kyle took a slow breath. "All right," he said softly. "I'll go." He grabbed his helmet and oxygen pack, then followed the faint path of glowing dust left by the drifting lights. Loom fluttered along beside him, its little wings catching the sun. As they neared the ridge, Kale saw something he hadn't expected. The lights weren't just falling, they were forming shapes in the air. Thin, glowing threads wove together into patterns like giant constellations hanging low over the land. Some part of him knew this wasn't a random event. It was a message. He glanced at the mother dragon, who had followed quietly behind. Her gaze stayed on the lights, calm but focused. Loom chirped and hovered closer to the glowing threads, as if greeting an old friend. Kyle reached out his hand. The nearest thread brushed against his glove, and suddenly his vision shifted. He wasn't standing on the moon anymore. He was floating among stars, drifting past worlds he'd never seen. He saw the mother dragon flying through nebula clouds, her wings leaving trails of light. He saw Loom's egg drifting alone through space, landing on this barren moon. And then he saw himself, holding the hatchling in his hands, keeping it warm. The vision faded, and Kale found himself back on the ridge, breath catching in his chest. He didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough. The mother dragon wasn't just an animal. She was part of something greater, something that traveled between stars carrying life with it. And somehow he had become part of that journey too. It made him think again of Arya. She had always believed humanity's future was about more than survival. It was about connection, about reaching out to life beyond Earth. Kale had always thought she was dreaming too big, but now, he wasn't so sure. They walked back together in the fading light, Kale, Loom, and the dragon mother moving in slow, silent harmony. The station came into view, its metal walls glowing faintly in the sunset. Inside, Kale sat at his console and pulled up Arya's contact file. He hesitated for a long moment, then began to type. "I know it's been a long time. I didn't know how to say this before, but I miss you. I wish you were here. You'd understand what's happening. You'd understand them." He didn't send it yet, but his finger hovered over the key. That night, Kale sat outside under the stars. The mother dragon rested nearby, her breath slow and even. Loom curled up in Kale's lap, glowing softly. The sky was still faintly rippling, as if holding the last trace of the vision. Kale didn't know what it all meant yet, but he knew one thing. Humans and dragons weren't meant to stay apart. And maybe the same was true for people like him and Arya. If the sky could open and bring two different worlds together, then maybe there was still hope for an old friendship to be mended. After all, he had saved a helpless alien hatchling, and its dragon mother had returned, and now the sky itself was opening, showing him that distance didn't have to mean the end. The morning after the lights filled the sky, Kale woke to a strange sound. It wasn't the hum of the oxygen systems or the crackle of the solar panels. It was singing. Not human singing, but deep and soft, like the sound of wind moving through a giant cave. He followed the sound to the crater, where the mother dragon stood with her wings folded. Loom was perched on her shoulder, chirping a bright melody that blended with her deeper tones. The sight made Kale stop in his tracks. The two of them together felt like watching sunlight spill into a dark room. The mother dragon noticed him. Her singing slowed, then faded. She lowered her head, meeting his eyes. Kyle felt that warm ripple in his mind again, the sense of shared feeling. This time it was stronger, more focused. He saw flashes of images, him carrying Loom into the station, feeding it warmth from the lamp, talking to it late at night. Then he saw something new, images of her searching the stars, calling for her child. The emptiness she felt was so deep that Kale's chest ached just from seeing it. He realized in that moment, the distance she had felt from Loom wasn't so different from the distance he felt from Arya. Both had someone they cared about who was far away. Both had lived with that quiet ache. The mother dragon stepped closer. Her head lowered until her golden eye was just a few feet from his face. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking into him. Kale didn't move. He felt safe. The light on her scales pulsed slowly and the images came again, but now they were mixed with something else. Possibility. He saw the hatchling growing strong, flying beside her through the stars. He saw himself, standing on a cliff under a different sky, speaking to beings he couldn't name. And then, he saw Arya. She was smiling, standing beside him, looking at the same sky. Kale blinked and the vision faded, but the feeling stayed. It was a quiet voice inside him saying, "You can still reach her." The mother dragon made a low sound, then nudged him gently with the side of her head. It was almost like she was encouraging him to go. Back in the station, Kyle sat at the console. He opened Arya's contact file again. The unsent message was still there. His hands hovered over the keys. He thought about what he would say if she were standing in front of him right now. Not about the dragons, not yet, but about them. About how he had missed her. About how he wanted to bridge the distance. Slowly, he began to type. Arya, it's been too long. I don't know if you still think about me, but I think about you. A lot. Out here, I've seen something that reminded me what it feels like to care about someone and not want to lose them. That someone is you. I hope you'll write back. His finger hovered over the send key. He hesitated, then pressed it. The message flashed away into the network. The moment he sent it, Kyle felt both relief and fear. Relief because he had finally done it. Fear because now he had to wait. For the rest of the day, he stayed busy, checking systems, cleaning the solar panels, even rearranging the storage lockers. But every time the console beeped with a new message, his heart jumped. None of them were from Arya. That evening, Kale walked out to the crater. The mother dragon was there, Loom asleep by her side. He sat on a rock and watched the stars slowly appear. I sent a message, he said quietly, unsure if she could understand. I don't know if she'll answer, but I had to try. The mother dragon tilted her head, then released a warm puff of air that washed over him like a sigh. The next morning, Kale was halfway through repairing a damaged comm dish when the console pinged. The sound was different this time. A priority. Reply. He hurried inside, his gloves still on. The message was from Arya. Kyle. I don't know what to say. I've missed you too. Things here have been a lot. I didn't mean to disappear. Tell me about what you've seen. I'm listening. Kale sat back in his chair, a slow smile forming. She hadn't shut him out. She wanted to hear from him. Later, he went outside and told the mother dragon. He didn't know why. Maybe because she had been part of the reason he'd found the courage. Loom fluttered onto his shoulder and chirped happily as if approving. The mother dragon gave a slow blink, which Kale was starting to recognize as her way of smiling. For the first time in years, Kale didn't feel like someone drifting alone, in space. He felt connected, to a hatchling, to a dragon mother, and maybe soon, to an old friend across the stars. As the sun set, the sky rippled faintly again, like a reminder that there was still more to come. Kyle stood beside the dragon, and Loom watching the light fade. He had saved a helpless alien hatchling. Its dragon mother had returned. And now, somehow, she had helped him begin to find his way back to someone he thought he'd lost forever. The next few days felt different for Kale, not because his work had changed. He still repaired equipment, monitored the power flow, and checked the oxygen levels. But because of the message from Arya, it was a small thing, just a few lines, but it had opened a door he thought was locked forever. She had said she was listening. Still, Kale didn't know how much to tell her. He had written 3 different replies, each one starting to explain about Loom and the mother dragon, but he deleted them all. It sounded unbelievable. He needed to find the right words, and maybe the right moment. One afternoon, Kyle was outside, clearing dust from the solar panels when the mother dragon appeared at the crater's edge. She moved slowly, as if trying not to startle him. Kale set his tools down and stepped toward her. Hey, he said softly, almost the way he would talk to Loom. What's on your mind? She lowered her head until her snout was level with his chest. Light began to ripple across her scales, bright at first, then softening into a warm gold. Kale felt that familiar pulse in his mind, the one that brought feelings instead of words, but this time it went further. The light swirled faster, and Kale's vision blurred. In an instant, the world changed. He could still see the crater, the station and the dragon, but layered over everything was a web of flowing lines like rivers of color moving through the air and ground. Some lines pulsed gently, others shimmered faintly. Kale realized they were flows of heat, air, and something else. Energy he didn't have a name for. He stared in wonder. You're showing me how you see. The mother dragon blinked slowly, and Kale felt the answer in his mind. Yes. Kale took a step forward and looked at the station through this new vision. He saw heat leaking from the comm tower, air currents curling around the solar panels, and even the faint rhythm of his own heartbeat glowing in his chest. It was overwhelming, but also beautiful. Then the mother dragon stepped closer and touched her forehead gently to his. The vision sharpened, and Kyle felt a subtle understanding, not just seeing the energy but sensing how to guide it. She showed him an image of his own hands adjusting a broken oxygen pump. But in her vision, he wasn't using tools. He was guiding the flow of energy inside it, like bending a stream toward a new path. The machine started working without a single wrench being turned. Kyle gasped. "You're teaching me to fix things without touching them." The feeling came again. Not just fixing, shaping. The vision faded slowly, leaving Kale blinking in the normal light. He turned to the mother dragon. "Why show me this?" The feeling that came back was simple. "Because you cared for my child." Kale felt his throat tighten. This wasn't just a thank you, it was trust. Real, deep trust. That night, Kale sat at his console. He thought about Arya. He thought about how he had always admired her ability to learn, to adapt, to see possibilities where he only saw problems. Now, here he was, learning something humans had never known before. And he realized this was something he wanted to share with her. Not just to impress her, but because it felt like the kind of thing they used to dream about together. He began typing. "Arya, I don't know how to explain this without sounding like I've lost my mind, but I've been learning something incredible. I've met beings who can see the world in ways we've never imagined, and they've shared some of that with me. I wish you could see it." He stopped there. He didn't send it yet, but this time, it wasn't because of fear. It was because he wanted the next message to be the right moment, the moment she could really believe it. The following day, Kale tried using what he'd learned. At first, nothing happened. He stood over a damaged air filter, staring until his eyes watered. But then he remembered the dragon's calm focus, the way she flowed with the energy instead of forcing it. He closed his eyes, felt the faint pulse of heat and motion inside the machine, and gently nudged it in his mind. The hum of the filter deepened. A faint green light blinked on. Kyle laughed aloud. "It works." Loom, perched on the bench, tilted its head as if amused. That evening, Kale found himself walking toward the crater without thinking. The mother dragon was there, watching the sunset. He stood beside her in silence. Finally, he said, "You've given me something I can't repay. But I think I know why. You want me to use it, not just for myself, but to connect with others." She didn't answer, but the slow pulse of gold across her scales felt like agreement. Later, alone in the station, Kale stared at the stars. He thought about the distance between himself and Arya. Not just the physical miles between worlds, but the silence that had grown over the years. He had always told himself that distance was too big to cross. But now he knew better. He had crossed a much bigger gap. Between two species, between two completely different ways of seeing the universe. If that was possible, then maybe reconnecting with her wasn't impossible either. Kale smiled faintly, leaning back in his chair. Somewhere out there, Arya might be looking at the same stars. Maybe she was even thinking about him. He had saved a helpless alien hatchling. Its dragon mother had returned. And now she had given him the gift of understanding, something that might just help him bridge the distance to someone he still cared for deeply. Kyle was getting better at using the gift the mother dragon had given him. It wasn't easy, First, the streams of energy looked like a tangled mess, but the more time he spent with her, the more sense they made. He began to see patterns like the natural rhythm of a river or the steady beat of a heart. And with every repair he made this way, every filter, every comm unit, every broken drill, he felt a little more connected to something greater than himself. But even as he learned, the thought of Arya stayed with him. She had replied once. She was listening. But days had passed, and there had been no second message. One morning, Kyle found the mother dragon waiting outside the station. She stepped aside, revealing a narrow path leading into the rocky hills. The light on her scales pulsed gently, an invitation. Kale looked at Loom, who was fluttering excitedly, then back at her. "You want me to follow you?" The feeling in his mind was clear. Yes. The path wound between jagged cliffs until it opened into a vast cavern. The ceiling was so high that light poured through cracks above, spilling down in golden beams. Kale's eyes widened. Nestled into the walls were structures, huge, smooth arcs of stone and crystal. They looked almost like machines, but they pulsed with a slow, steady light. The mother dragon moved to one of the largest arcs and lowered her head. Kyle followed, touching the smooth surface. Through his gift, he could feel the flow of energy. Inside, it was strong but uneven, like a heartbeat struggling to stay steady. She sent him a feeling. Help. Kale nodded. He closed his eyes and focused, tracing the energy patterns. Something was blocking the flow. He pictured himself gently guiding it aside, the way she had shown him. Slowly, the pulse evened out, the light growing brighter. When he stepped back, the entire cavern seemed to hum in relief. The mother dragon lowered her head in thanks. Kale smiled. "You could have fixed this yourself." The answer came as a warm feeling, not just fixing, learning together. They spent hours in the cavern. Kale helped repair 3 more of the strange arcs, each one easier than the last. By the time they finished, he felt tired but deeply satisfied. It reminded him of working alongside Arya back on Earth, fixing broken comm towers in the rain, laughing when they both ended up soaked. Back then, every job had felt like a shared victory. Now he had that feeling again, only this time it was with someone from another world. That night, back at the station, Kale finally sat down to write to Arya again. "Arya, today I helped fix something unlike anything I've ever seen. I can't explain it fully. It's alive in a way, but also a machine. I'm learning from someone who sees the world completely differently than we do. It's making me think, maybe the distance between us isn't as big as I thought." This time he hit send. The reply came 2 days later. "Kale, I'm glad you wrote again. I've been thinking about what you said before. Things here have been overwhelming and I didn't know how to answer. But I miss working with you too. Tell me more about what you're learning." Kale read the message twice, then a third time. She wanted to hear more. She hadn't turned away. In the days that followed, Kale continued working in the cavern with the mother dragon. They developed a rhythm. She would show him where the energy flows were weak, and he would guide them back into balance. Loom followed them everywhere, darting between the crystal arcs and chirping in delight whenever one lit up fully again. Sometimes, Kale wondered if this was why the mother dragon had stayed, because she wanted to share this knowledge with someone willing to learn, and she had chosen him. One evening, as they returned to the station, the mother dragon stopped just outside the airlock. She lowered her head and pressed her forehead gently to his. Kale felt a rush of images, not just the energy flows, but memories of her travels through the stars. Worlds bathed in oceans of light, sky cities floating above clouds, other dragons soaring together in patterns that painted the heavens, and at the end of the vision, she showed him something else. Him, standing beside her, looking out at a new world. When the vision faded, Kale understood. She was showing him that this bond wasn't just for now, it could be part of something much bigger. That night he wrote to Arya again. "I wish you could be here. There's a whole side of the universe I never imagined, and I think you'd understand it better than anyone. I know we've been apart for a long time, but maybe we can find our way back." He didn't know how she'd answer, but for the first time in years he truly believed she might. As Kale sat by the window, watching the mother dragon and Loom rest under the stars, he realized something important. He had once thought that being human meant limits. Limits on where he could go, what he could understand, who he could connect with. But this bond had shown him otherwise. Humans weren't just survivors. They were learners, builders, bridge makers, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to close the distance between worlds and between hearts He had saved a helpless alien hatchling. Its dragon mother had returned, and together, they were proving that the space between them didn't have to be empty.